Welcome to Bonnie, Scotland, and to the Scottish Net Zero Community Future Series, where we find out what's possible when small businesses come together in the race to net zero for COP26. But first of all, I want you to meet Tabby's granny.
There's always to see something in nature that astounds you. Always. On some occasions, my husband and myself, we got up 5 o'clock and went down to the seaside, and it was absolutely heaven. There was such a peaceful air about it, and all you could see now and again, a seal climbing onto one of these wee islands. So that was always quite good. Early in the morning, there's such a peacefulness in the air. You know, you don't get through the day. I don't know, we haven't seen any seagulls here. There was a time, every morning at a certain time, you heard one seagull, sea thing, quawking about, you know, early in the morning. At first, when I saw the really high mountains, I wondered what that was. And then it dawned on me, I thought, oh my God, these are the mountains. I don't know, I was quite in awe of it, especially when the sun has been shining all day and there's a glow in the mountains. The whole mountain lights up. I was quite smitten with that when I saw it first. The same, the sea can light up. I remember there was a really, really hot day, and the sea had taken a glow. All the waves that came in, they were all lit up. That was quite a sight to see. Yeah. Well, I grew up with nature. We had quite a few fields. And as children, we had to walk there, you know. Sometimes, you know, once I said to my mother, much to my greatest regret afterwards, other children have holidays to play in. We have holidays to walk in. But when I look back, I always enjoyed it. Yeah, I always enjoyed it. And I can still remember krabbling about on the earth, and we had really good soil. You could get your arm right into it and felt the cool earth going over your arm, you know. So, as I say, I'm a peasant by nature. Getting things to grow and walking the earth. Yeah. You know, it's very peaceful and very therapeutic. As I say, if you open your eyes, there's always something interesting to see in nature.
Right, Granny. I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah.
What a wonderful cameo there from Tabby's granny. A view of nature from someone who's had a lifetime experience of it. The same could be said of many grannies who have an abundance of untutored intelligence, wisdom, and understanding. She said, if you remember, if you open your eyes, there's always something nice to see in nature. That positivity has to be cherished. Sadly, the world that she knew is changing. A small blue dot in the universe, a planet, is under threat. It's a threat that our grannies never really knew or anticipated. But then they had milk delivered by electric milk floats in recyclable glass bottles, packaging that was not generated from fossil fuels, food that was seasonal, not flown halfway around the world to be on our plates, public transport that was used by most people. Things were so different then. And by the way, grannies are to be loved and treasured. They do speak wisely, and certainly in Scotland are the influential matriarchs of the family. They speak and you listen. My granny used to tell me, be a man of action. Don't stand on the sidelines and criticize the referee. Get on the field and kick the ball. Now, more than any time in the past, it's time for us to get on the field, get in the game, and kick the ball. And we need to score ecological and environmental goals. At Scottish Net Zero Community, we're putting a global climate action team together. We're mobilizing action. We're creating a movement of movements. We're bringing tools to the small business industry to help them find out about what getting back to nature and protecting our planet is all about. Creating that very real connection with the earth that Tabby's granny described. And telling them how they can act by joining the race to net zero. Our message is a positive one. We know that by acting together, we can achieve great things. Any fool can be negative, but it takes intelligence, character, commitment, and dedication to be positive. We're full of hope for the future. We don't fear it. Hope mobilizes. Fear paralyzes. Join us in our action-oriented, positive, hopeful journey to reverse the damage that we have done to our planet. You will hear all about this in person today and online through our future series sessions. Enjoy them. And to kick us off, you'll hear from Gavin Tweedy, Chair of Net Zero Community Scotland, and Nina and Juliet, two of our Net Zero Ninja volunteers.
What a wonderful welcome from Tweedy, who's been able to introduce us. And we're kicking off what is going to be a really interesting 2 weeks. We've got lots of interesting conversations in person and online. But we'll hand it over to you, Gavin, where, as Tweedy said, let's hear from you. So what is Scotland's opportunity to help shape the future of the world?
Well, thanks, Tabitha, and welcome everyone on this first day of the Future series. It's great to be here, and I want to obviously thank Tabitha for putting this fabulous event programme together and the support of everyone who's here today who's helped us put this together. It's really awesome, so thank you. I think for me, we talk about the opportunity is Scotland is unique at the moment. You know, we're a nation of inventors and innovators. We have this history of, if there's problems in front of us, we find ways to solve them. I think Scotland is a brave nation when it comes to implementing things that make a difference. And we were the first country in the United Kingdom to implement a smoking ban, for example. We're one of the first countries in the UK to implement a ban on smacking children. We have stricter regulations on drink driving. These are brave things to do. They may be unpopular in sections of society, but Scotland has often been one of the first countries to take on these measures. We've got this long history of creating these innovations that the world has adopted, from things like the telephone, television, penicillin, James Watton's steam engine, all the way through to Dunlop and the pneumatic tyres. we're a country that's long punched well above its weight. But, you know, when it comes to climate action has not reached mainstream society. It has been something that has been limited to a few groups who can afford to bear that as a lifestyle choice. So when many people today talk about climate action, it's a middle class sport that people, you know, certain groups have to implement. And what we've got to do is work as a society to make climate action accessible to everyone. And that's one of the things we set out to do in the net zero community, is to be informative and inform everyone on these things. Can I just check everyone's hearing me loud and clear? I saw there was a question in the chat there. Yeah, yes, okay, you can hear us, cool. Yeah, so the big thing we're looking to achieve today, and in fact over the next few 2 weeks, is really to make this conversation accessible to everyone in mainstream society. That's our opportunity, to make it open and accessible to everyone by sharing stories that inspire others to start their personal journey to a low carbon future. So what I'd like to do now is actually invite Nina to give us her thoughts on this opportunity that lies in front of us. Thanks.
So, hey, thank you. Yeah, so about Scotland's opportunity to shape the future, I want to draw from my experiences. And as you can all hear, I'm not Scottish, but Scotland is such a beautiful country and has so much to offer, which is why I decided to study in Scotland. It's not just because, like, of course, like I was drawn by the country itself and how beautiful everything is and how nice the people are, but also what might not be so clear for everyone who actually is from Scotland and from the UK, there are amazing opportunities for studies. I'm from Austria and I tried to study something in climate change in the environmental sector. And in Austria, there's not much variety. There's barely anything. I also looked a lot in Germany. There's nothing really. And in Scotland, there are so many great opportunities to study in climate change, in different sectors, whatever people are interested in. And yeah, that is something that I find like really amazing. And yeah, that is what shaped my thinking of why I wanted to go to Scotland in the end. Another thing is I really wanted to stay in Scotland after my studies finished. And so did most of my friends, international ones and Scottish ones. And unfortunately, it turned out to be really, really hard to find a job in the climate change sector. First, I thought it might be because I'm not Scottish, because I'm from Austria, but it turned out that it isn't really, because all of my Scottish friends also really had trouble finding jobs in the climate change sector. And I think that really is an opportunity for Scotland to get better, to improve, to create those opportunities, as those jobs are needed to generate all other opportunities pretty much. If we have people working on this, on working towards a net zero community, yeah, this would be amazing. So we really need more, more getting people into the place to actually work for it. Which is where I also want to highlight that, well, if anyone is interested in more about this and shaping the future and future generations, there is an event on, there are multiple events on the 4th of November by the Scottish Net Zero community that are all highlighting topics around this. We have, about how to engage young people, about how climate change can be dealt with by the next generation. And so, yeah, if you're interested in this, then I would encourage all of you to have a look into that and maybe sign up and listen.
Thanks, Nina. And, you know, I actually want to just draw attention to the fact that Nina and Juliet, Robert and Stuart are 4 of the volunteers in the community who've come into the network and are extremely talented and have wanted to make a difference, to create an impact in the world, and they're doing that. But I also want to highlight, to Nina's point, that it can be difficult for them to connect with job opportunities. And one of the things that certainly I'm doing within the net zero community is drawing attention to the work that they're doing to help connect them with potential employers of the future. That's my commitment. You know, they will invest their time in helping the community. By return, myself and the other members of the community have an obligation to help those young people, help those people find an opportunity. So I just want to stress that the point of today isn't talking at people, it's talking with you guys to have a conversation about how we can all make a difference and help each other. So I just want to say thanks again, Nina. That was brilliant. Is Juliet going to join us and say a few words as well now?
She should. I mean, she's on the phone, unfortunately. I'm really sorry with the fraud department. There's been a bit of an issue. I hope she will be here in any second. But I will have a look if she'll be there.
We'll come back to Juliet, knowing that, you know, the security of our credit cards is something that's really important and takes priority in today's world. So as we move on and continue the conversation, Gavin and Juliet, what is the legacy that you and we want to... Is she coming?
Yes.
Perfect timing.
Sorry about that.
That's all right, Juliet. What is Scotland's opportunity to help shape the future of the world? Gavin has done a wonderful call to action and said this is about engaging mainstream, recognising that this is not a middle-class sport. Climate action needs to bring everybody together. Nina highlighted how one of Scotland's opportunities is that we can share and educate young people, the opportunities to amplify the jobs there. So what do you think?
Well, I think that it's also about the specific sectors. So I completely agree with what both Gavin and Nina have said. Obviously, reaching the youth is the most important point with regards to climate change. And also the call to action is very important. It's important to not lose faith and to not actually lose momentum with regards to climate change. But I think that Scotland has a particular reach with regards to climate change, specifically with transportation, or agriculture, or the concept of rewilding. So I'll specifically talk about agriculture today, since the Scottish Government does have a few funding programs in place, which could actually have a very positive impact in Scotland and also in the UK, but could also be used and put in place elsewhere in the world. So for example, they have the Young Farming Climate Champions, which is a funding program for young farmers. So it was an outreach that started back in 2012, if I'm not wrong. And it was really trying to bring young people back into agriculture, since it did start aging a bit. Young people started moving away from agriculture. And it's really funding young farmers who want to actually put in place a sustainable way of farming the land. And so they're really funding all of these projects. You can actually go on the website and look at the long list of projects that they've been funding for the past 10 years. And I think that it's just such a great way to get the youth involved, but also get different sectors of the economy involved, because it's not just about, I feel like it's about reaching like different levels of society, and it's about reaching everyone from different industries and really coming together in order to put an end to climate change, in order to find solutions together. It's about community building, it's about community resilience. And in order to actually be able to do that, you do need to involve everyone from all levels, from all industries. And I think that the Scottish Government has been able to start implementing programs that are allowing us to reach this goal. And so, yeah, with their Young Farming Climate Champions, with their forestry grant scheme, they've also started funding agroforestry schemes recently, which is obviously a great way of involving forestry, but also agriculture into one project. There's also Scotland's on its way to becoming the #1 nation for rewilding. And so I just think that there's so many different programs that the Scottish Government is actually investing in that could be actually spread around the world. It's really easy, it's really clear. It's just having faith in different people in different industries. And I think that that's one thing that Scotland is actually helping shape the future of the world for. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Juliet. I'm just going to, before you comment, I want to keep us to time, Gavin, so that we make sure that we've got everybody having the opportunity, who's joined us and is currently listening in, to come in. So moving on to the next question, Gavin, from there, what is the legacy that you want to create for the future? Juliet's kind of done a nice segue there, but where do you want us to be at the end of COP26 and moving forward to 2045?
For me, it has to be mindset and collective responsibility. So if you saw someone light a cigarette today in a restaurant or on an airplane, how would you react? How would people in society react? It's socially unacceptable. And that is the mindset that we have to develop towards fossil fuels, that we must reject carbon-intensive products and services. And as much as we would like to think that authorities and companies will do what they do, it's up to us to stop creating the demand for fossil fuel intensive products and services. If we reduce and stop the demand, there'll be no opportunity to be met. And that will force a change in industry and society to adopt more planetary friendly solutions. So we can start to do things like buy local, buy seasonal, think about the provenance of where things came from, how they got here, make more responsible purchases. Now, I'm not saying I'm a saint, because I'm not, but I'm doing my bit, and I'm encouraging everyone else to do their bit as well. So whether it's doing things like trying to have more plant-based foods in your diet, thinking more about where things come from, we can all do something. Fashion's another big one for me. You know, buy what you need when you need it, spend more money on the right things. So for me, this is about developing a new mindset, and I would like to hope that we will see, as a consequence of COP, more education and awareness into how we think, act, and treat the planet. So, Nina, Juliet, I'll put that to you.
Okay. Well, as in what legacy we want to create for the future. Well, I personally want to see the world not burn and not be flooded. Obviously, like generally long-term future. I want people to be able to be happy and like appreciate nature and connect with nature, and yeah, to not be scared of dying because of catastrophes that come up. Yeah, but for that, of course, like we do need to take action, and there are things that we really do have to do. And well, of course, very important is to mitigate. Mitigation of emissions, super important. But at this point, I also want to highlight that it's not only important to mitigate, it's also important to adapt. And that both of this, they both have to be combined efforts, because there's so many things in ways that you can adapt and mitigate all at once. Like really easy example, like greening roofs. You can adapt as in it's gonna insulate your house better, but also, well, the plants are of course always good for mitigation. So yeah, there are just so many things where people have to really pay attention to efforts, as in putting mitigation and adaptation both at the table, and yeah, like just not ignoring adaptation while they are mitigating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's also important not to give in to the negative mindsets, because it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially when we get harassed every day with nonstop information about climate change, like wild forest fires that are happening even in Austria at the moment in the middle of November. And it's really easy to fall into a negative mindset and to get stuck into this this cycle of thinking, oh, like this is just too overwhelming. Like, how can anyone actually put anything into place? How is one action, one person, for example, becoming vegetarian actually going to have an impact? And I think that it is really easy to go into this negative cyclical mindset. And I think that it's important to remind ourselves that every little helps. You do, like, every little thing that we do does have an impact because it accumulates. It's not just about individual actions either. It's about community resilience. So it's about people working together in order to fight against climate change. And it's about looking not just at the short-term effects of solutions, we also need to start looking at the long-term impact. So we really need to start implementing solutions that aren't just for well, greenwashing or PR, which is something that we have noticed happening with governmental, well, environmental measures. It just seems to be a lot on patting themselves on the back, being like, ooh, finally put in place a green measure, when in actual fact it's a very short-term measure. We really need to start looking at the long term, which goes back to this idea of mitigation and adaptation. And so it's really having the ability to appreciate all the little steps that we're moving forward. Every little thing that we put into place is just a stepping stone towards a massive solution. And it's all about communities coming together in order to pave those stones towards solutions for climate change. So yeah, just don't give into the negative mindsets and really think about the long-term impact that we can have with these solutions.
Very well put, Juliet, thank you. Tabitha, how are we doing for time? I want to make sure we get a chance to invite wider discussions. How are we doing for time?
We're still on track for time. So what we're moving on to, Gavin, is just quickly from all three of you, what do you hope the attendees of the future series get out of the sessions? And just before you answer that, we're going to be splitting you into breakout rooms following this, so that you can meet some other people who are on this journey with us to net zero, explore what it means and explore what you want to get out of the next 2 weeks as well. So I'm just priming you to start thinking about that before we split you out. Gavin.
Thanks. Well, I've actually learned a lot working alongside Nina and Juliet, Rob, Stuart and Zara, who's also here today, who's providing support. Hi Zara. Every day is a school day. We can always learn something. And Jimmy, who's on the line as well, would be the first person to agree with that as well. Hey, Jimmy. I think that what we need to think about is we can influence someone every day. And what I want to get out of this event is for us all to take away, this is not, don't think someone else should, the government should. We can, we should, we will do things that will make a difference. So if I talk about businesses, they can put schemes in place like to make electric vehicles available, but they have to realise if you've got 1,000 staff, you can take it a lot further than that. You have an opportunity to influence that 1,000 people in their downtime, not just in their workplace. When they're at home in their personal lives, that company still has an opportunity to bring a positive impact to their lives, whether it's supporting reward schemes for carbon-friendly behaviours and things. So when it comes to climate action, none of us are ever off duty. Take that away, that we can always do something and we can always inspire someone. And I'm looking to hear more stories of things that people have done to be inspired myself and then share that with others.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's about continually educating ourselves just by having conversations with people about climate change. That's the one way that we can actually start combating climate change. It's just discussing the way that people are currently making changes in order to help. It's also, well, once again, not having a negative outlook. It's really about every little thing that you can do with regards to climate change, continually educating yourself, but also implementing new environmental or sustainable strategies within your own company. And I think that over the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear a lot of interesting stories from different people from different backgrounds and different industries that is really going to show you how creative you can be with regards to combating climate change. There's so many different things that you can do. Even this afternoon, an Indigenous leader and a youth activist is going to be talking about how climate change is impacting the Amazon. And I think that is incredible because it's something that is so different from what most people, I'm assuming, that are in this call are used to. And it's just about having conversations with people from all over the world and just finding new creative ways of combating climate change, things that like you wouldn't even have thought of because it's something that isn't in our normal mindset, something that we're not taught in school in the Western world. And it's just, I think that it's an amazing opportunity to be able to just tune in, listen to people talk about even just their stories, just their lives. And I think it's going to be incredible. I really hope that you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely agree with both what Gavin and Juliet said here. Yeah, of course, I really hope that everyone is going to be engaged by what all those interesting people have to say. and you will be able to find especially like events that or causes that really interest you as a person. Maybe also a couple different ones, a couple that you weren't your first pick, because it's really interesting to hear about new perspectives and things that you weren't really aware if you are actually so interested in them. Maybe it turns out you're really interested in them and they can really change something about your perspective, or what you can change in your life, if it's as an individual person or within your organization or company. So yeah, there are so many different events. So I don't know how far everyone has looked into it already, but definitely have another look, see if anything piques your interest. They're really I have a couple of things written down here. There are, of course, events targeted at SMEs. We have tomorrow live event that is also live streamed, and in the afternoon virtual events that are all targeted at SMEs. The same on Tuesday, the 8th of November, and on Friday, the 12th of November. But also we have lots, as Juliette has talked about, community resilience and local communities. We do have lots of events talking about that, especially on the 5th of November, but also another couple that are just talking about community engagement. If it's something completely different that you're interested in, how about listening to something in mobility, for example. It's there's really things from everyday, how do people do their everyday drives, but also to tourism, how can that change? How can you change your behaviors in tourism in a sustainable way, which would be the Wednesday, the 10th of November. So really just have a look again at all the events that we have in the future series, because there are really so many interesting ones. And if anything piques your interest, just drop by, listen, and we hope to be able to motivate you to change something about your life.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I can see a few people on today that have inspired me personally. I'm inspired by Jimmy's story. His life has been fantastic. He's devoted his life to kind of trying to create a better future for the next generation. I also see Peter Paul here, who's inspired me with stories of driving an electric vehicle in Allerdale in the north of Scotland. And his point was, if you can drive an electric car here, you can drive it anywhere. So there's inspiring people on this call today that we can all take something from, and I'm looking forward to having a wee chat with everyone in the breakout sessions that are coming up. Back to you, Tabitha.
Thanks, Gavin. So now we're going to move into the breakout rooms. You've got about 10 minutes. And the prompt, which we'll put up in the chat room as you move in, is what do you want to get out of these sessions? And that might be for the future series. You might want to expand it into COP26 itself. You might want to think about you personally, or as we've already mentioned, you might want to think about what you want your community to get out of it, what you want your business to get out of it. There's lots of different ways that you can take this question of what do you want to get out of the next 2 weeks. I hope you have a lot of interesting conversations in the small breakout rooms, and we will see you back in the main group in about 10 minutes, as I said, so that we can hear more about what you are wanting to get out of the sessions. Zara, can you open the breakout rooms? And you should just have a button that's coming up that allows you to go and join some conversations.
Tabitha, are we also supposed to go into breakout room?
I think we are going to stay here.
Okay.
Zara, do you want to come and join us, and we can have a conversation, the three of us, while we are waiting?
Yeah.
So let's just add you to the spotlight, Zara. So let's bring it to you, Zara. We'll keep an eye on time here. What do you want to get out of these 2 weeks?
I think I want to learn more about the climate and how I can benefit my country, because in Pakistan there's not much regard for climate change, and if there is, it's usually from people who are, I guess, in the upper class, and that's this very sad reality of it. Otherwise, I mean, otherwise people can't afford to consider the climate because there's so many other problems in society. But I definitely want to find a way, as in almost learn from this and take it back home and implement it there, which is, and I think this is a great start to that. Yeah.
I like that. That's very much about learning. I mean, it's what you were actually talking about there, Juliet, of learning from other places and being able to bring it back to your own community, your own culture, your own land, and say, this is how we need to be working together, you know, to be able to be part of a global movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is also a danger. I was actually reading an article about this earlier. A lot of people rely on Indigenous groups in order to like get us out of the climate change crisis. They're like, oh, Indigenous knowledge and everything. But that means that we're literally putting the weight of the responsibility of solving climate change onto these Indigenous groups that are genuinely just worried and like keeping their land and territories away from like the grasp of oil companies, or trying to like maintain stop deforestation like within their own territories. And it's a lot of responsibility to like put on somebody's shoulders. So I think there is also a point that we need to really emphasize, that we also have the majority of the responsibility, and we can't just rely on others. We can't just like, I don't know, mention the notion of responsibility and then just that's it, or we're free, like we don't have to do anything. And so it is important. The most important point is that to include Indigenous leaders and Indigenous communities into the conversation, because they're the ones that are the most impacted. That and low-income communities, island nations that are probably going to disappear in the next 20 years. They absolutely need to have the chance to be able to share their stories, the chance to be able to be at the table, making the decisions and really truly trying to implement change. Because right now, all we're doing is giving them a pedestal and being like, oh, share your story. And we're like, oh, that's so sad, that's so tragic. And then we're just going back to the normal way of life. And so we just need to be able to find a way to actually give them the chance to talk, but not just in a pedestal way where we're just being like, ah, that's great, like green measures, but actually implementing the change that they're asking us to. Sorry, that was quite a tangent. But,
well, that was a tangent, and you're something that's passionate about. So I'd like to bring it back to you, Juliet. What do you want to get out of these next 2 weeks? And I'm curious if it's something around, well, what you've just been talking about with the Indigenous leaders. So I mean, what do you want personally? And if you use the I statement.
Well, I hope that as a whole at the COP26 that Indigenous leaders will actually have a chance to talk and will actually have a place at the table. I really hope that for once we'll actually listen to them and not just make promises of investments and projects that don't actually come to fruition. I hope that we can actually all learn something from one another, instead of just blurting out what we believe others have done wrong and not actually acknowledge what we've done wrong personally. And that we actually start building something rather than just making false promises with no follow through, I guess. But for the next, like for the future series, like I'm really hoping to get a little bit of hope. Like that's something I've been lacking of with regards to climate change recently. I feel like it's like, that's what I was talking about earlier. I keep getting caught into like a cycle of negativity, and I personally just get sucked into it. Like I just read one article about I read a court case, like an environmental court case that's like, oh, Shell has been brought to the Dutch courts, and they have to like cut their emissions by 45%. And then I read that there's a similar case that happened in France 10 years beforehand, and then it got overturned. And I'm like, okay, so that's probably going to happen again with Shell. And it's easy to just get caught into this cycle of negativity. But what I forget is that, I'm a firm believer in community resilience. And I think that the solutions to climate change are really going to come from the bottom up. I really genuinely believe that. I don't think that we should rely on governments. I don't think that we should rely on large corporations. I really think that it's all going to be about local communities that are like fed up with waiting for their saviors and just come up with like their own solutions. And we're already seeing that in Northeast India. Like a lot of women have started implementing wells for their own villages because they don't have access to clean water, and they're like, okay, like I cannot wait for the government anymore. We're seeing that a lot in Ghana as well, with tribes that are once again led by women, seeing strong correlation, not making a cause for feminism, but I do believe that it's going to come from the bottom up, and I'm hoping that over the next 2 weeks, people sharing all their stories, that we'll be able to have a little bit of hope with regards to that.
Yeah. I just want to I absolutely agree that I do think it's going to come from the bottom up, but I also think that we can't let big corporations and governments off the hook that easily. I don't think.
Can I bring it back just to the conversation of what do you want to get out of? Because I'm hearing lots of thoughts and energy, and I'd just like to bring it back a little bit, because what I heard Juliet say is, over the next couple of weeks, I actually want to get hope. I keep on getting caught up in this cycle of despair. And I think it's really important to come back to this point here, because there's so many people in the exact same position who are struggling to find the hope and wanting to have reasons to be optimistic. And you're highlighting them, but we also have to acknowledge that there's emotions that come when we go into cycles of negativity. So how do we give space for that? And what I want to do over the next couple of weeks is to give space for people to acknowledge their emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly within these conversations, so that everybody can find hope and become more committed to finding the solutions there. So if we just bring it back, so I know that I want people to have the space to acknowledge their emotions. I want the opportunity for people to find reasons to be optimistic. And I also want people to realize that we're all indigenous to Earth. There's not one single person on this planet that does not belong to the Earth. And if we're able to, come back to exactly what my granny said, remember that connection, what then happens as we change, as we recognize that we're the voices of the Earth. Throwing that then to you, Nina, what do you want to get out of today's session?
Well,
2 weeks.
Yeah, the 2 weeks. Well, I think, obviously I'm not opposed to getting some hope as the situation generally, currently with climate change, but also COVID, it's all not looking too good. So would, of course, also appreciate a bit of hope. But I'm honestly also just looking forward to learning some new things, or hearing other people's perspectives, because of course, even though I'm trying to get perspectives of different communities or different people, I think it's sometimes hard, because especially now that we're still not able to properly move around, we are always in the same circles of people. So we always see the same people, hear the same just experiences. And I think it's going to be really interesting to hear from people who are experts in their field, and what really they have experienced, and how I can impact my life with that, how I can maybe change things, or how I maybe thoughts come up that I haven't had really so far, or I make connections between small things. So I really hope that that's going to happen for me, that I will will click for small things that I can change, but that could actually have quite a good impact.
Awesome. I like that. I want to hear from a lot of different other people to get connections and see things in a new way, so that I can be inspired to take more action.
Yeah, I think communication about those things is so important. It's so important to really actively listen to others, and not just, because as Juliet said earlier, it's easy to just blurt out our own things, our own thoughts, but it's so important to properly listen to others, and then connect that with your own thoughts also, and see how that relates or how that doesn't relate. And
and being able to admit that you're wrong with something that you believe through your entire life. Sometimes there's specific mindsets that we grow up with because of the way that our educational systems are set up that are wrong, and it's hard to admit. It is one of the hardest, it's one of the most human things ever, is to not admit when you're wrong. And I think that is one thing that we need to become more aware of, and to
we
work on.
Or you. you're making the assumption there, but I want to bring it back to Zara, to just give Zara a little bit more floor space in this conversation. What else, if anything, would you like to get out of it, or in response to what you've heard here, Zara?
I think that, so one thing in response to what I've heard here is that we were talking about, I think Juliet was mentioning Indigenous people and how it has to start from the bottom up. I would say my only challenge with that is actually educating people about the importance of climate change, and how difficult it is, because I've seen it from a first-hand perspective. In Pakistan, my dad is a huge climate activist, but if he and I go on walks and start picking trash up, I've had conversations with people who have said that it's not our concern. So my question here would be that how do we get people who've grown up with such a strong mindset to actually change their ways when they have so many other, I guess, problems, and they have things to worry about, like finances, the economic disparity in the country. Climate change isn't at the top of their list. And I personally think they would people might think that it's more of a Western concept, given that it's not discussed enough in South Asia.
Yeah. That's a really powerful point, and I want to hold on to that. I also want to close the rooms and bring people back. So I just want to end our discussion so that we're able to welcome people back.
Do that.
I've done it for you, so that you didn't have to. And then I'm just going to remove the spotlight from all of us, so that we can just welcome everybody back into a gallery perspective as they come back up. Thank you. I think we'd like to hear more. I'd like to hear more, Zara, at some point about your experiences.
Definitely,
Yeah, me too.
I think we should organise a separate conversation that we can record and do an added bonus, Zara. Because I think
that would be great.
Just from the little bit that you've heard there, I think there's a lot that we could all learn, and I'd like to make that available to everybody during and after.
Yeah. Definitely.
Excellent. 2 people coming back already. We're just waiting for everybody else to come back. We've removed the spotlight because this is very much where we want to bring in the group conversations. So if you're not on gallery view, I invite you to go up to the top where it says view on Zoom and just select gallery so that you can see everybody who's joined us live today for the conversation. And I just want to open up the floor to everybody to share a little bit about what do you hope to get out of the next 2 weeks? Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first, Tabitha, if that's all right. So, hi everyone. James Napier, one of the co-founders of the Scottish Net Zero community. And again, thanks to everyone that's put the effort in to make this happen. I think that the foundation of what we're trying to do in the community is to create a movement to net zero, something that has its own momentum, something that people see a community with people in it that looks like they do, in whatever term that means, and ultimately to get to a point whereby you have to justify harder not to be part of the movement than you do just to join and do your bit. And then very much we talk about collective commitment and personal journeys. So I'd like to see people take responsibility. It isn't about everybody doing the same thing at the same time. It's about people taking the personal journey. And for me, the watchword is do as much as you can, as soon as you can. Every little thing that you can do makes a difference. So.
Thank you, James. So I like that. That's a thumbs up from that, Jessica. Would you like to share something and go next, perhaps?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. Jessica Bockler from the Aleph Trust. Gosh, what to say? I feel like I'm landing into this with a sense of, yes, that sense of personal responsibility. Also, a kind of real, true re-evaluation of what is my life like? Where can I personally make changes? Very concrete and down-to-earth changes, and I sit down with my family and we have those kinds of conversations around the dinner table to see what is it that we can do in our house, in our neighborhood, amongst friends, amongst family. And it's not easy to have those kinds of conversations, even in the family, right? There are opinions that diverge about what's going on in the world and how we should respond to it. and to kind of make that personal link. So for me, it's all about having those conversations, but also kind of going onto that inner journey and seeing how can we relate what's happening on the inside to what's happening on the outside. I very firmly believe that the inner and the outer connect, that at the core of it, I'm a transpersonal psychologist, so at the heart of it, I do believe that the human mind, the human psyche, is interconnected with the world at large, with nature at large. We are not separate, we are embedded in, you know, the large systems, ecosystems, but also psychological systems, if you will. And that embeddedness, I'm on this mission to share with everyone what that means. And it's, you know, and in a very concrete way, how can we adapt our ways of living, our lifestyles, to blend more with nature, to learn from nature. And how can we share that with others who just really kind of don't resonate with thinking in those ways, right? So I'm excited about having those kinds of conversations, about learning how to language things in ways that make them accessible to people. Oh my goodness, and we're all in this together because yes, it is one earth, we all live on it, and I don't want to see the world burn or be flooded. And I'm very conscious of the people who are already today experiencing extreme weather events around the world, whether that is drought, you know, and having massive impact on their living conditions and so on and so forth. We've all seen the pictures, right? Here I sit in my nice home and I think of the people who don't have a home like this, I haven't got the privilege to live like this. And so I constantly think, what is it that I can do to make a difference? And I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad to be supporting this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. Who else would like to share a bit about what they, Peter Paul? Like that. That was a quick hand up there.
Oh, sorry, I was hitting the wrong button to unmute. But hi everyone. I would like to see a sense of realism. And after sort of a week or two, a non-judgmental sense of realism. You know, it feels like everything is being juxtaposed at the moment, you know, where you have optimism versus quite a vocal, judgmental tone. And historically, that doesn't really lead to anything in human nature or in history. And I think realism, just, you know, an educated, well-informed sense of realism is what we need to get more momentum and more action. You know, hope and optimism are beautiful things, but if it doesn't lead to any change, or there's a desire to get an outcome that might be different, but you're still doing the same things, then again, nothing really will change. And the divide between the northern and southern hemisphere will not be closed if we all think up north here that we can just continue the way we live our lives, because that's certainly not the case. And I really think and urge and advocate a sense of realism, and that's what I really like to see in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Well, we'll make sure that we continue that realism. We're already sitting in the background in the Scottish Net Zero community to say, how can we take practical action and continue beyond? And Jimmy, I notice you've got your hand up and you'd like to come in.
Now, very, very briefly, thank James, because he highlighted something when we were sharing. He said that people like recognition for what they're achieving. And my involvement with the climate activities goes way back to the early 90s with my young engineers. Rather than look at the anthropometrics or the ergonomics or something, you know, we were looking at climate, location and environment as being major factors that influenced whatever it was the youngsters were trying to solve. Being a Rotarian, I'm involved with the disaster network assistance. And very much like Jessica just pointed out there, you know, we're sitting here in our homes, we can turn on the tap and we're getting good, clean, fresh drinking water. And there are millions of people out there who don't have that, and they're dying because the water that they've got is infected. And this is, you know, we're a voluntary movement that strive to address that. But talking about addressing things, and that's where James and I agreed, I think. In 2009, I took a group of young professionals to Canada through Rotary. And while we were there, I got chatting to the folk from Calgary. In 1988, they were the host city for the Winter Olympics. And one of the things that they did was Calgary is now recognised globally as a volunteer city, because the employers, including the council and all the major employers, recognised the volunteers that stepped forward to help out before, during and after the games. And they still recognise volunteers who help out within the city. Rather than work a 40-hour week, they said, well, look, you can work 36 hours. In other words, we will give you a half day in recognition of the voluntary service that you're doing within the community. And they get more out of their employees in the 36 hours than they were ever getting out of their employees in the 40 hours. That was, one of the legacies that they found, that by recognising what they're doing in their free time, in their own time to make a difference, it increased, because they felt my employer recognises me. And that got me thinking about Nina and Juliet and the advice that they could actually give to businesses if they're trying to make a small difference with regards to climate. Then, Gavin said that, he wants to enable, to encourage and enable new opportunities within the climate change sector. And I thought, this would be great, if they could set themselves up, as not so much climate consultants, but opportunities for the young folk who've come out with these qualifications, that have a desire and an opportunity to make a difference. That, if you come up against a brick wall and there's no doors and there's no windows, then you're smart enough to knock out a few bricks and create your own opening. That's what I'm trying to say, And the one final thing to Nina, if I say Gros Scott, does that make sense? What does it mean?
It actually means like Greek god, but it's not really used in a religious sense.
No, I got it. They kept on saying it to me when I walked into the shops. Gros Scott.
Yeah, it's just like good day. Like.
All right. Was that because I was wearing a kilt?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for sharing. And it's such a shame that we've reached the top of the hour already. And Sandy and Robert, I know that you haven't had a chance to contribute to the larger group community sharings here. I hope this has only whetted your appetite. And for those of the people who are watching the recordings who haven't been able to attend live, you will be able to continue the conversation in the chat box below where you're watching the recording. But also I hope this inspires you to continue to come along to the conversations. We've got about 31 of these conversations over the next 2 weeks, with plenty more opportunity to meet people, be inspired, have great conversations, and really help build the energy of what is going to emerge into Scottish Net Zero community afterwards through our co-creative collective conversations. Thank you very much for everybody joining the first session. And I look forward to seeing some of you maybe in half an hour on the next one.
Thanks, Tabitha. Thanks, everyone. Great to meet you all. Bye.
Yeah, everyone.